Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week on the Cyclekart I want to put some detail into the nose cone. See you in a minute. Just having a clear out in the garage, and I found an old oil cooler radiator that I used to have, or that I got for the trike, but decided I didn't need it. And working totally against the concept of simplicity and lightness, but within the authenticity side of things, of making models, I've decided it might well fit rather nicely in the front end if I chop it down a bit. So it's adding weight for no particular reason other than it looks good, but I think I might consider putting it in. I'm just going to chop the two outlet pipes off and we'll see how it looks. That also serves to mask off the front end as well of all the suspension bits that aren't possibly quite as good. But yes, I think that's yeah, a bit weighty but good idea to have in. I think we'll make a bracket up to fit the bottom, I think, and put it in there because it's about the right size. Just going to have another go at getting this grill shaped to fit the aperture. What I want to do is to just, a bit like vac forming, I've got a master here like a plug, and I've got a frame there that can go around it. If I can effectively push that down onto it, gently work it so that it gets the shape into it, I'll see if I can then cut the frame away and work it from there. I'm just lining up the center line with the vertical diagonals, but I'm not sure whether it will actually bend sufficiently well, but I thought it was worth a try. It's distorting, but it won't. I don't know. It's maybe a case of just manipulating it by hand. I mean, I've got a slight hollow in it already. It's just a matter of getting that. I think I'm probably just going to mark a datum on it first, so that I'm constantly working in the same position to line up these diagonals, which aren't actually yeah, as you move it, it starts to push these things out of line. Slightly, but maybe if we start to mark our center line down there, can always clean that off later. The top as well, and the bottom. Just gives me a reference point to keep working on. Now I've got some sort of a bend in it, but it's not getting very far as long as this edging is on all the way around the edge. And the problem with that is that if I cut it off, it starts to literally fall apart because there's no connection anywhere. So what I'm going to do now is have a go at just going around the outer edge, outside the line of the grill, and just put a little bit of acid flux on. I'm just going to try and solder it and see if I can get that joined up all the way around, and then I can cut the frame around. Just using a phosphoric acid as a flux. I tried the paste stuff, but it didn't seem as happy with it. But I think I'm getting enough purchase on this just to consolidate it. And then we can, as I say, cut the outer frame off. Right, that gets us a piece of gauze which is not attached to anything and is reasonably stable. So if I revert to my top to bottom line, should be able to start and push down a bit now and get a bit more movement. Really doesn't want to know. But at least it's not falling to pieces. One thing I do know, it's vicious stuff. It already caused me a few injuries. So we're getting somewhere anyway. Right, so in principle it's working, in practice not quite so. It could be fettled to fit, I think, but I'm not quite happy with it as it sort of the ability to bend it, and certainly this fact that it delaminates effectively and comes into pieces isn't helping. So I think it's probably back to the drawing board a bit for this. Depends which of the two fronts I'm doing. One of them has got the grill quite prominent, sticking out like that. The other one has got some bars down with this behind it further back, set further back. So that might, what it really needs is a frame inside, I think, to hold it. But we're getting there. It's a good starting point anyway. Now I've been struggling to get the grill to, or finding a way to get the grill to stay in there in the right place, and I can't really see an easy means to do it because this stuff is so fragile. What I've done is to cut a piece of plywood that is exactly the same size as the opening, or slightly larger than, I should say, sets back a little bit, And I think if I attach this, I've now got a vertical edge that I can attach this to. I can bend it over and attach it and glue it all the way around the edge, and that will give me a much better chance for the whole thing to stay in one piece, and then I can push it in from behind. And what I can do before I do that, I've got that shape established, what I'll do is cut very close to the line all the way round, so it'll just effectively leave me like a frame that if it's painted black I don't think you'll see it. It will hold the grill, and then I can actually bolt that in from behind with fixings, because I can attach things to the frame. It's just that you can't really do much with this stuff without it trying to fall apart. But I think once I've got this attached in a couple of places, I can then manipulate it and just bend over the bits that I need to over the edge, glue them, and I've got a sensible way of doing it. Now I'm just preparing the nose cone for a bit of primer to sort of find out what sort of finish I've got underneath it all. There's a lot of work will need to be done on it with filler and things, but I'm just getting off the old release agent which is on it with some warm water, just a bit of wet and dry just to take the high spots off. And then when that's done I can put a coat of primer on it and get a rough idea as to where we are. Probably need a little bit of work on the back edge, certainly, a little bit of work on some of the joints here, where the joints in the mould were, just to smooth things out, but we'll get it in a state that we can get some primer on it first, and then I can deal with it from there on. I'm not going to spend too long on it, because until it's properly fitted, which will be, you know, a little bit later on, there's not a lot of point, but I do want to get a coat of primer on just to see what sort of task I've got to put it right. I finally got around to tackling this grill surround and how to fix it. What I'm doing essentially is just super gluing individual strands on. In itself it's not particularly strong, but when you do it to 20 or 30 of them, it gives it that bit of strength I think it needs, and it should then drop into the radiator sort of shroud cowl thing, and most of it will be hidden inside anyway. But I'm just basically just putting blobs of super glue on each and every strand, bending them over down the side, and then we'll try and tackle the other bars which run top to bottom. There are some about 3 or 4 millimeter diameter rods running vertically down the grill. But we're just I was really not sure how I was going to do this, because it's pretty unstable until it gets glued up all the way around really, but it's starting to take a bit of shape now, I think. We can pretty it up later. Right, so that's got me the grill in roughly. I've got to put some brackets on that framework that I'd painted black, and then they can bolt through the sides. There are a couple of bolts on the original around that grill anyway. Probably put one at the bottom and one either side reasonably high up. A little bit further back than I'd hoped, but I'm not too worried about that because the variant that I've chosen to model of the two has got some metal bars in front of the grill as well, so it will give me some room for that. And I've picked up some metal rods which should be good enough to do that. I need 9, I've got 10. What I'm going to do is bend those to the profile of the piece that I took out, the actual piece I cut out there. Now I'm just going to bend up the grill pieces. I'm using this as a, well, not as a former, because I think if I tried to bend on this it would break it, but as a template, if you like, to get the shape of the actual rods. I've put a centre line down it to mark where the middle one will go. Just had a measure up and a look at the drawings to get a rough idea of where they sort of finish at the sides. So I'll put the centre line in. I'm measured out to where I think it will be at the side, and that comes out at 75mm. So working on that basis, I think it means that I can put these grill slats at 1-inch intervals, 1-inch centres, and that will give me what I need, and I should be able to get the curve on it in 3D, if you like. So what I'll do then is get something, and I don't know what, probably the vise or maybe even the holes in the bench, to just start and bend the rod to suit to get to that profile. And I'm going to leave about 1 inch either end, and I think what will happen is then I shall, from the end where it sort of hits the grill shell, I'll grind it back probably half depth, and then that will be able to glue in and glass fibre over to give me a fairly solid mounting on the inside of the grill shell. So we'll start and have a bend with this and see how easily or otherwise it bends, because it's quite thick stuff, but it is about the right sort of diameter in scale anyway, so see how we get on with it. Right, that's got me the first one about right. I've marked the point where it should emerge from the cowl with a bit of pencil, giving myself about 20mm, 3/4 of an inch either side of that. I'm just going to cut that down to size, and then I'll grind these flats on top and bottom, and we'll see how it looks when it's actually in the shell. Right, that's tacked the first one in with a little bit of super glue just to get it roughly right. Remains to be seen now how it looks when we get the other 8 in, but we'll just cut those out now, bend them to shape and see how we get on. Right, that's cobbled it together for the moment. It's only lashed up at the moment just with a bit of super glue, but I think that's pretty much where I wanted to be with it. I've put 7 bars in instead of the 9 on the original. I could tighten the spacings up and do another 2, but I think I'm quite happy with it as it looks now. By the time that's all painted in with the cowl green, I think it'll be pretty okay. So I'm happy with that. Pretty much that sorts out the cowl itself in terms of the detailing that I need to do on it, so we can then move on to something else. Just cutting myself out a template for the where the steering arms come out the side of the cowl. A couple of reasons. Firstly, the original that I'm copying, the steering rods are coming out much lower down on the cowl, so I can't use the same sort of positioning and the drawings I've got for it. And the other thing is that I've got a vertical piece of timber in the cowl, so I can't just cut a big hole out. I need to cut a hole in the middle, almost in front of the vertical piece of timber on that connects it to the rest of the bodywork. So I'm just doing this out of a bit of plastic so I can slot it over the steering arms and just double check that it's about the right height and position when the thing's sitting on the ground. Yeah, that's about right. Check on the other side. That's it. I can go and cut those now on the actual cowl. Right, we've validated that the positioning is about right, so I can just use that now as a template to put on either side. We can drill the holes out. The same on the other side. Then any bits of final trimming I can do later on. I think I'm going to have to lift the front part where the axle hits the top of the cowl, because I think it's not quite deep enough, but we can do all these things afterwards when we've got it on a rolling chassis. I think I'll just drill out the 2-3 corners there so we've got curved corners, and then cut the rest out with probably with the jigsaw, I think. Right, in the end I did it with a diamond disc on the drill. So I've got it done roughly. That'll just go and check now and see if that fits, and we can tick another one off the list. Right, that's got them both in. I've got to tidy the slots up, but until I've got it running and know roughly where everything's going and that we got about the right heights and clearances, there's no point in getting it finally tidy until then. But I think we're in a reasonably good place. I'll check it now on all the full locks and see how it goes, but that's pretty much tidied that bit up. As I say, it just needs the whole trimming to make it vertical and look pretty. Right, so that's got the nose cone looking something like. There's still a way to go on detailing it and getting it finally sorted, but I think it's now beginning to look a bit more like the real thing. Hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week. We'll be doing something different on the Cyclekart. I'll see you then. Bye!